Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 3, text number 16. Iti nigadena bhishtuyamano Bhagavan animisha rishabho varsha dhara abhivadita abhivandita charanaha sadayam idam aha. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, the priests who were even worshipped by King Nabhi, the emperor of Bharatavarsha, offered prayers in prose. Generally, they were in poetry, and bowed down at the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord of Lords, the ruler of the demigods, was very pleased with them, and he began to speak as follows. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Aho Bataham Rushayo Bhavadbhir Avitatha Girbhir Varam Asulabham Abhiyachito Yad Amushyatmajo Maya Sadrusho Bhuyati Mamaham Evabhirupaha Kaivalyat Athapi Brahmavado Namrisha Bhavitum Arhati Mamayvahi Mukam Yad Vijadeva Kulam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead replied, O great sages, I'm certainly very pleased with your prayers. You're all truthful. You have prayed for the benediction of a son like me for King Nabhi, but this is very difficult to obtain. Since I am the Supreme Person, without a second, and since no one is equal to me, another personality like me is not possible to find. In any case, because you're all qualified Brahmanas, your vibrations should not prove untrue. I consider the Brahmanas who are well qualified with Brahmanical qualities to be as good as my own mouth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Avitatha Girbihi means they whose spoken vibrations cannot be nullified. The Brahmanas, Dvija, the twice born, are given a chance by the Shastric regulations to become almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. Whatever a Brahmana speaks cannot be nullified or changed in any circumstance. According to the Vedic injunctions, a Brahmana is the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in all rituals, a Brahmana is offered food, Brahmana Bhojana. Because when a Brahmana eats, it is considered that the Supreme Lord Himself eats. Similarly, whatever a Brahmana speaks cannot be changed. It must act. The learned sages who were priests at Maharaj Nabhi's sacrifice were not only Brahmanas, but were so qualified that they were like devas, demigods, or God Himself. If this were not the case, how could they invite Lord Vishnu to come to the sacrificial arena? God is one, and God does not belong to this or that religion. In Kali Yuga, different religious sects consider their God to be different from the God of others. But that is not possible. God is one, and He is appreciated according to different angles of vision. In this verse, the word Kaivalyat means that God has no competitor. There is only one God. In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it is said, Natat samaschabhyadikascha drishyate. No one is found to be equal to him or greater than him. That is the definition of God. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. We just saw the prayers offered by the Ritvijaha, the priests, the great sages who had performed the sacrifice on behalf of Maharaj Nabhi, and being pleased by that sacrifice, the Lord has appeared. And hearing their prayers, Shukadev Goswami is narrating this. He's saying, Iti nigadena abhishtuyamanaha. Generally, prayers are offered in poetry, but here it is nigadena, in prose, in a speech, in a talk. That's how we are reading in prose. This chapter and few more chapters are like that. And the Lord was pleased and he began to speak. Idam aha, aha, spoke. Aho bataham rishayaha. I am very pleased. Alas. These are words of pleasant greeting. Alas. Aho bata. Aham rishaya bhavadbhir. Rishayaha, great sages. Bhavadbihi avithatha girbihi. Girbihi, girbihi means, giram means words, vibrations, spoken. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions in the 10th chapter, Maharshinam Bhrugur Aham. Among Maharshis, I am Bhrugu, 10th chapter. Giram asmyekam aksharam. Among Giram, I am Ekaksharam, referring to Om, Pranava. Among vibrations, among words, among the sacred chants, I am Om. Giram asmi ekam aksharam. Yagnanam japa yagnosmi. Among the sacrifices, I am the japa yagna. Sthavaranam Himalayaha. Among the immovables, I am the mighty Himalaya. Of the great sages, I am Bhrigu. Of vibrations, I am the transcendental Om. Of sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names, Japa. And of immovable things, I am the Himalayas. See? So, Giram. Here, Girbihi. Bhavadbhir avithatha girbihi. Avithatha means not futile, not in vain. Bhavadbhir avithatha girbihi. Bhavadbhir girbihi avithatha. Your words, avithatha, will never go in vain. The Lord is saying, He is addressing the sages and He is saying, your words shall never be untrue, shall never go in vain, shall never be futile. Avithatha girbhi. Bhavadbhir avithatha girbhi. Varam asulabham abhiyachitaha. Abhiyachitaha, what you have requested, varam, that benediction, asulabham. Not possible. Because what have you asked? Yad amushyatmajo maya sadrusho bhuyat. You have asked for him, amushya, atma amushya, referring to him, to King Nabhi. Yad amushya atmajo maya sadrusho bhuyat. You want a atmaja for him, his son, but that son should be maya sadrushaha, should be like me. Bhuyat. Iti mamaham evabhirupaha kaivalyat. Kaivalyat means absolute, one without a second. Me, there is no second for me. There is no one like me. I am unique. I am Kaivalya. Bhuyat iti mamaham evabhirupaha, form, who matches me. Kaivalya. But I am one without a second. Athapi, but nevertheless, Brahmavadaha, you are all Brahmanas and your words. Brahmavadaha na mrusha bhavitum. Mrusha, false. Na mrusha bhavitum, should not become false. Brahmavadaha, athapi Brahmavado na mrusha bhavitum arhati. It cannot become wrong. Your Brahmavada, the words of the Brahmana. Because mamaiva hi mukam yad dvijadeva kulam. Dvijadeva kulam mukham mamaiva hi. Dvijadeva kulam. Dvijas, Brahmanas, who are so qualified, they are like Deva kulam. And you are all like that. You are all Brahmanas, you are all priests, you are all sages, you are Deva kulam, you are all having such wonderful qualities, Brahmanical qualities. Your mukham, your mouth, mamaivahi, I consider your mouth to be mine own, my own. Mamaivahi mukham yad dvijadeva kulam. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, O great sages, aho bataham rishayaha. I'm certainly very pleased with your prayers. Aho bataham, indicating that I'm pleased. You're all truthful. You have prayed for the benediction, varam abhiyachitaha, a son, atmajaha, like me, mayasa drusho, for King Nabhi, amushya, atmajaha. But this is very difficult to obtain. Asulabham. Since I am the Supreme Person without a second, Kaivalyat, and since no one is equal to me, another personality like me is not possible to find. Maya sadrusho bhuyat asulabham. In any case, because you are all qualified Brahmanas, Dvija Deva Kula, your vibrations, Brahmavada, should not prove untrue. Namrusha bhavitum. I consider the Brahmanas who are well qualified with Brahmanical qualities, Dvijadeva Kula, to be as good as my own mouth. Mamaiva hi mukam yat Dvijadeva Kulam. And Srila Prabhupada has also commented on these words. The three expressions here, they're all very convergent. Bhavadbhir rushayo bhavadbhir avithatha girbihi. O great sages, your words should not fail. Brahmavado namrusha bhavitum arhati. Qualified brahmanas and their words cannot go false. It ought not to go false. Bhavitum arhati. Namrusha bhavitum arhati. Mamaivahi mukam yat dvijateva kulam. Dvijateva kulam mukham mamaivahi. And your mouth is like my mouth. So in other words, Prabhupada points out here, this is the exalted position of the Brahmanas. And Prabhupada has pointed out, these Brahmanas here, they could call Vishnu to come from Vaikuntha. So they were not ordinary sages. They were very spiritually qualified. The Lord was pleased and He appeared before them. And here Prabhupada has said, the Brahmanas are given a chance by the Shastric regulations to become almost as powerful as the Supreme Lord. So this is the position of a Brahmana. This is the position of a Vaishnava. This is the meaning of a Brahmana. Not somebody who is just born in a Brahmin family who has no qualifications. And just because they have a thread or something, they are born in, they're called. This is not Brahmana. Full of Brahmanical qualities are expected. And we in our society, in our understanding, we say Brahmanas or we are Vaishnavas. Can you imagine then the position of a Vaishnava? Of course, in one sense, it can be used synonymously because Brahma janati iti Brahmana. That is the meaning of the word Brahmana. You can't say a poor rich man. No, how can it be possible? He's a rich man, you are saying, but he's poor? Not possible. Brahmana means one who knows Brahman. And Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. Krishna is the Param Brahma. So, moment we say Brahmana, it means a qualified Brahmana. Cannot be unqualified. So, but then in the society, this kind of claiming that I'm a Brahmana has come about, and so we have to say, no, you are qualified Brahmanas. Rich man means really a big bank balance, big house, big bungalow. We have to further explain. So this is the position of Brahmanas, and they were also great devotees, and they could call the Lord, and the Lord appeared, being pleased with their devotion. And that is why in their prayers, which has become part of the Bhagavatam, pure devotional principles are explained. We saw how they were feeling embarrassed that we called you, we asked for a material benediction, and we disturbed you. My dear Lord, you perform wonderful activities. You are full of activities and transcendental activities and engagements. But we called you, and how merciful you are. You left that and came. See, these are Very, very special. This is pure devotional prayers. And so Prabhupada has also commented here, if this were not the case, how could they invite Lord Vishnu to come to the sacrificial arena? The learned sages who were priests at Maharaj Nabi's sacrifices were not only Brahmanas, but were so qualified that they were like devas, demigods, or God himself. That is why a spiritual master who is so qualified, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriha Aikya. The words that come from his mouth are special. It's like Krishna's mouth. The words of the spiritual master are not different from the words of the Lord. They are aligned, they have the same potency, and hence those words have to be taken and should become the driving, should become the direction, should become the life and soul of the disciple. This is the position of a spiritual master. And such a qualified spiritual master, we must surrender to, we must worship. Vedega Yahara Charito. Vedas describe his qualities, the spiritual master's qualities. This is the position of a spiritual master. So, today is Bhaktivedanta Thakur's disappearance day. Bhaktivedanta Thakur did many, many special things. Very, very extraordinary contributions. And then his son Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and his disciple Srila Prabhupada. There are some very path-breaking, very radical changes that these acharyas have brought into force to make Krishna consciousness that can be practiced all over the world. And these are such changes that it's not easy to properly comprehend. What is the position of a guru? Who is a guru that our parampara teaches, the Bhagavatam teaches? And Srila Prabhupada today also happens to be July 9th. A very important direction given, signed by Srila Prabhupada, which also they could not comprehend. Within ISKCON also they could not comprehend. And the 11 of them, soon after Srila Prabhupada's passing away in 1977, they had this letter, and they thought that now we have to become acharyas. There was one temple president of Los Angeles, and somewhere in 1977, it was like a big shock, we can imagine, right? We must all know the history of our organization. It's very important. All of us should know what actually happened. It was a young movement, and in 1977, these 11, most of them, they were 28, 29 years old. So you can imagine, many of you must be 28, 29. And they were 7, 8 years old in ISKCON. And now they have to become acharyas, they thought. And immediately furniture was organized. Big asanas were made. And they started accepting the same pranam mantra for themselves. And then they started accepting name. And they were all considered, because very clearly in Prabhupada's books, pure devotee, spiritual master. And so they started calling themselves pure devotees. There was a temple, it was in Los Angeles. The devotees, there was one Mataji, she was a very good book distributor. And she had taken initiation from the one of the 11 in Los Angeles. And she was very inspired by her guru. And she started telling, actually my guru, you all don't know, he's actually an incarnation of Rupa Goswami. And this was going around among the disciples. So the temple president went to he was a Prabhupada disciple. So he said, he went to that one of the 11 gurus and he said, I think you should do something about this. They're calling you an incarnation of... I know, right? I don't think this is all not true. So he said, shh, don't disturb their faith. But then he couldn't hold that and he started talking to a few other temple presidents, God brothers, Prabhupada disciples. And the word got round. And then he was removed as temple president and he was told he cannot come to the temple. Just see, this is how it was. Somehow he was still hanging around and someone else, some other temple invited him and he was no more temple president. He couldn't be. And then he was in another temple in America. This is 1981-82, around that time. So at that time, there was one devotee who was aspiring to take initiation. He was the servant of another guru, another one of the 11. And that, among themselves also, some of them used to doubt, are we really pure devotees? No, they were also, some of them were feeling. So one of them started feeling, are we really pure devotees? The word got around among the 11 that one of them is having this doubt. 4 of them flew to that temple and they started convincing him. They all had a meeting to convince him that don't speak like that. We all have to speak the same language. We are all pure devotees. Don't ever give even the slightest doubt to anybody. So that was the idea. So these 4 of them flew into that temple and they were going to have a meeting. And this aspiring disciple, he was serving them. And then they said, now everybody go. They wanted to have a meeting. It so happened that he switched on the tape recorder and came out. And all of them were talking. And then they were talking, and later on, he went there and the tape recorder was on. It had recorded everything. The 4 of the gurus talking among themselves about one of them trying to say that maybe I'm having a doubt, maybe I'm not a pure devotee. So and that tape came to this temple president who was sent away, was thrown away. And he heard that and he was shocked. And they were all talking about that we should all be together. We should not, create any doubt among others. And then they heard there is temple program. It must be in the morning going on. And then one of them says, yes, now, come on, put on the garlands. Let's go down to the temple and let's meet the little devotees. It's time for Guru Puja. Let's go and receive Guru Puja. Let's fake it till we make it. This was the kind of a talk that was going on. Let's fake it till we make it. And this was there in the recording. Just see. What is the position of a pure devotee? What is the position of an acharya who is worshipped? And it was so even in Bangalore. We used to have Prabhupada Guru Puja. After that, another asana would be there, picture would be there. We would again do one more Guru Puja. Sometime it was simultaneous Guru Puja, and then they changed it, and then one. And after singing the song, Prabhupada, Prem Dhwani, again we would start another Guru Puja here. And even Prabhupada's disciples, they also had to line up and offer flowers. If anybody does not attend Guru Puja, they will be sent away. Prabhupada disciples. This kind of practices had come into existence. Because it was not easy for them to grasp the direction given in the July 9th letter. Okay, let's begin with Bhaktivedanta Thakur. What happened? Bhaktivedanta Thakur, during his time, he was English educated. At the age of 18 or 20, he had written an English book. And he had not yet come in touch with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy yet. And later on he came and he read Chaitanya Charitamrita. He had read many philosophies of the Western world. Immanuel Kant, Roman philosophers, Aristotle, Plato, and many such philosophers. And then when he read Chaitanya Charitamrita, he found, wow, what is this? The philosophy that's here, my God, it's outstanding. And then he started reading more. And then he wanted to know, okay, we are talking about Chaitanya and reading Chaitanya Charitamrita is like this. Where are the current followers of Chaitanya? Because at that time, by Bhaktivedanta Thakur's time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tradition, the followers, they had deviated and distorted it so much. They had mixed tantric practices. Tantric practices has intoxication. And in the form of worship, there is involvement of women. It is said during Bhaktivedanta Thakur's time, the word Vaishnavi was synonymous with a prostitute. A Vaishnava by the day and a Tantric by the night was the thinking. And respectable people would never consider somebody a follower of Chaitanya as a respectable person. It had come to that stage. In Bengal, in Calcutta. So Bhaktivedanta Thakur, he started trying to trace out where are the real followers. And then he started finding somebody who claiming to be a follower, and he would analyze them and see that they were not. That's why he identified so many apasampradayas. All of them had deviated and distorted the true teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just see dharmasya glanihi, how decline of dharma happens under the influences of Kali Yuga. And he kept searching, where are they? And finally he came across, there were a few pure followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they were reclusive. They didn't want to mix with the people. They wanted to be on their own. And they would live under thatched huts, and they would chant 64 rounds every day. They would be reading Bhagavatam and other literatures of the Goswamis among themselves, never mix with the people, general people. They were truly very pure, very advanced, meditating on the pastimes of Radha Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other acharyas had instructed. They were very pure and they were very few and just among themselves. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur came across them and he saw they were actually Bhajananandi Babajis. And he was happy to see them. And he was happy that there was very few, although very few, genuinely following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he also practiced, followed them, underwent initiation from them. And so he did all that. But then because he had read Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavata, which says, one day this message will go all over the world. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had read Western philosophies, realized that this philosophy is far outstanding than any of these Western philosophies. He knew this has that potential. If thoughtful people pay attention to this is the supreme philosophy. He was convinced. But that was the circumstances. And then he prayed to Krishna that please send me a son who can take my work forward. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also spread the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's setting up 64 Gaudiya Maths in 18 years. Can you imagine? 1918 he started the first Gaudiya Math. And 1936 he passed away. By then 64 Gaudiya Maths were there in India and also one outside India in Burma. And he would travel, of course 1936 Bangladesh was also part of India. There were Gaudiya Maths there too. And you can imagine, including one in Madras in South India, in Bombay, in Delhi. So he had traveled, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had traveled. He had many sannyasi disciples, many publications, many books coming. And then he realized that this was one of the important radical change that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He made many adjustments. Why he was making all these changes and adjustments? To prepare how this philosophy, this practice can go all over the world. And one of the important changes he made, traditionally, what was the practice in India? There would be a sadhu, an acharya of a matha. And that he would be the supreme powerful person of that matha. Everything will go according to his direction. He was spiritually qualified and materially also very qualified. And he would. That's how you see even in South India, there are so many mathas in Udupi, Ramanuja. You'll see that acharya, and for his matha, he is the acharya. In North India also, in Vrindavan, we come across, there are a few mats. There is a sadhu, and he is the all-powerful person. And he will appoint one successor to him. There are many, many, many hundreds everywhere in our country. This was the tradition. This is okay when the organization is small, but our acharyas were thinking of a worldwide organization. Not possible for such a thing. That is why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur introduced the concept of a governing body commission, which for his disciples, it was a bewildering thing. Because they had only seen their guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as the all-powerful acharya, and he was giving all directions. And that was the practice in India everywhere. You look at any matha Mayavadi Mata, Vaishnava Mata, everywhere it is, this is the practice. But now there is a governing body commission which has to govern. This is a radical departure from the tradition. And when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur passed away, 1936, December 31st, and after that, their disciples, they were also thinking, what to do now? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur never appointed a successor Acharya, and now he's gone. He talked about a governing body commission. But what about? How can it be run like that? They just could not understand, and they appointed one. He was a brahmachari, Ananta Vasudev, who was the secretary of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, very scholarly. They appointed him as the Acharya. That's what Prabhupada writes. My Guru Maharaj, on the night before he passed away, he spoke about so many things, but he missed out the most vital thing. If he wanted to appoint an Acharya, he would have named, but he did not name. On the other hand, he said, form a governing body commission and continue the mission. A self-effulgent Acharya will appear. This was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's plan. But they could not grasp. We should see how a spiritual institution, how it is run in India, and how a radical change Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had recommended, and they could not get their arms around it. It was incomprehensible. They appointed one. And it went on for a few years. He was a brahmachari, very scholarly. He was traveling, and they thought that, okay, this is the way. But then one day, they discovered some letters in his room, and there were some women writing intimate things to him. And a few sannyasis came together and they confronted him. And he got very upset. He denied. And he said, no, this is not true, this, that. But then they said, no, we want you, we know we have enough evidence. We want you to step down. So he had disciples. Some of them wanted to be with him, and some of the sannyasis, they didn't want him to be. So the mutt split into two factions. And then it led to litigation. And then more and more disillusionment happened. More and more left people. Another group appointed someone else. This group appointed someone else. And then it went on and they would fall down. So the Acharya, the position of an Acharya as described in the Vedic literatures, that position is very special, very advanced. Uttamadhikari. So, what Bhaktivinoda Thakur had found, they were all Uttamadhikari practitioners. They were holding the Chaitanya's pure tradition. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted an institution of preachers. That was a Uttamadhikari movement. This was a Madhyamadhikari movement. Or a Uttamadhikari comes down to the Madhyamadhikari and runs the institution. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada, when he started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, very early, I won't take up this one, another occasion I will tell. Usually we think that from 1966 to 77 were the golden years in ISKCON, where everything was nice. Not true. Prabhupada was constantly struggling. One opposition after another among his disciples. That aspect of history of ISKCON is not so well known. Anyway, so in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada gradually was training, but he was aware that his disciples were all ambitious, waiting to become Acharya, because they had seen Acharya is a position of so much power and influence. They were all ambitious. Most of them. Maybe there were a few. That's our ambitions. So, Prabhupada, seeing all of this, and then on July 9th, he gave it another radical departure, which he had already practiced. That although Prabhupada was traveling and he had nominated some of them to initiate on his behalf, and he wanted this to continue. He said, don't change anything that I have created. But soon after he left, these 11, instead of continuing to initiate on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, calling themselves the Acharyas. And then by 1982, 2 of the 11 had fallen. And 1984, a lot of questioning happened. In the year 1987, 4 of the remaining of the 11 minus 2, 9, 4 more fell from grace in 1 year in 1987. That was the most tumultuous year in ISKCON history. So many things happened around that time. We will talk another occasion. We should know what has happened in our own organization, in Srila Prabhupada's organization, so that we will know what is it, how Prabhupada wanted this to be followed, and how, just like Gaudiya Math, the GBC, they could not grasp it. In ISKCON also, they could not grasp an officiating system of representative system of initiation to go on. Even now they are struggling to understand what it is. So this is the position of a Brahmana, this is the position of a Vaishnava, as it is described here. And we should not make a farce of it. We'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur ki, Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur ki, Nitai Go Premanandi.